Thursday, live right here on the morning after on Sports Grid. Sirius XM, channel 159, the home for Sports Grid Radio on Sirius XM, all across the Sports Grid network as well. I am Ben Stevens. Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us on this Thursday TMA. There is a ton to get to over these next 2 hours, bringing you up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It's a football Thursday once again here on the morning after. We have to talk about so much in the National Football League, but we begin with week number 2 of the preseason. A standalone matchup tonight to kick off week number 2 out in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, Washington. The Seahawks hosting the Chicago Bears. A live update and look at the lines for tonight's preseason week 2 opener between the Hawks and the Bears right now. Seattle, a 3.5-point home favorite over Chicago at the moment. But please pay attention to that total. An over-under that got all the way up to 40.5. The hook has been removed. We are back to 40 right now for that total between Chicago and Seattle at the moment. That total looks a lot larger than most of the pregame numbers you saw for week number 1 of the preseason. But of course, the over trends hit in a big way during week 1 of the preseason. Of the 16 games that we saw last weekend, 13 of the 16 hitting the over. So a reaction from the market. Oftentimes, every week 2 total, when you go from preseason week 1 to week 2, gets up there a little bit. But is this an overreaction? We'll discuss throughout these 2 hours. Plenty to break down throughout the National Football League. Mike Blewitt will join us in this opening hour. We'll have people live in Seattle in hour number 2 as well. Somebody that won't be there for the Seahawks tonight, Drew Lock, in that quarterback competition. Drew Lock testing positive for COVID-19 earlier this week. He will miss tonight's preseason week 2 game. So Geno Smith, who got the start in Seattle's opening preseason affair against the Pittsburgh Steelers, will presumably play a ton of the minutes yet again tonight. And as you can see there, that quarterback comparison for a QB battle in the Pacific Northwest, nearly neck and neck in week number 1 in Pittsburgh. Geno Smith, 10 of 15, 101 yards through the air. Drew Lock, 11 of 15, 102 yards, and also added 2 passing scores. So as that QB competition continues to play out through this preseason schedule and into training camp for the Seahawks, we'll continue to monitor what we see there for Pete Carroll and company. But tonight, no Drew Lock. He is out due to COVID. Geno Smith will most likely get a large amount of the playing time against the Bears, who will put out second-year quarterback in Justin Fields. A full-blown breakdown of that game and plenty of news and notes around the NFL coming your way in this opening hour. But of course, as we go from the preseason to the near end of a regular season in Major League Baseball, that postseason positioning is what everybody is thinking about right now, especially with all of the divisional matchups that we are seeing across the bigs this week. And front and center is Atlanta, the Braves versus the Mets. Now, Atlanta taking the first 2 games of this series against the Amazons at home early this week on Monday and Tuesday. But enter Mad Max. Max Scherzer gets the start for the Mets yesterday. They were booked as a road favorite near $1.50, and the Mets hold on for a 9-7 victory. But it was shaky at times yesterday for the Mets in Atlanta. They jumped on the Braves early, scoring 2 runs in the top of the first, back-to-back homers from Starling Marte and Francisco Lindor, resulting in a 9-7 victory that we'll detail here in just a couple of seconds. But first, we welcome in our Sports Grid radio audience, the opening hour of the morning after, live on this Thursday, Sirius XM, channel 159, all across the Sports Grid network, all of our terrestrial radio affiliates now in the mix as well. I am Ben Stevens. So the Mets take the first game of this 4-game set, or the first game that they have won of this 4-game set, last night in Atlanta, 9-7. Like I mentioned, the Mets jumped on top early. 2 runs in the top of the first, back-to-back homers from Starling Marte and Francisco Lindor. Then Brett Baty, in his debut at-bat in Major League Baseball, on the second pitch that he saw, the Rook hits a 2-run blast, putting the Mets up 4-0 very early on. They actually had a 6-1 lead in the 7th, but it got a little dicey. The Braves got to Scherzer, and then it got even dicier in the 9th when the Mets had a 9-4 lead, but they hold on for the victory, the first win of this series. They look for the even split today with Jacob deGrom on the bump against Max Fried for the Braves, which is interesting that deGrom and the Mets are booked as a road underdog today. Well, now New York has a 4.5 game lead in the National League East, and we can see those odds for the divisional crown working in New York's favor. Minus 850 now. It was down to minus 550 yesterday with just a 3.5 game lead entering the third game of this 4-game series. The Mets led by 5.5 games before this series got started, and they were a minus 1,100 favorite. So pretty much every game in the standings, according to the FanDuel Sportsbook, is worth about $2.5, $3. The Mets are 9-6 against the Braves this year, looking to avoid their first series loss today against any divisional opponent. And it's interesting that the Braves, as you saw there, better odds to win the National League pennant than their own division. That's the National League East. The American League East, the Yankees still holding a 10-game lead in this division. And the Yankees finally get a win last night at home in dramatic fashion. A walk-off grand salami off the bat of Josh Donaldson in the bottom of the 10th. The Yankees' third win in their last 14 games, a 10-game lead in that division. By the way, the Blue Jays avoid a sweep against the Orioles. Tampa and Toronto tied for the final 2 wildcard spots in the American League at this moment. Plenty more around MLB coming your way in the opening hour of TMA. But next, an update from the NFL on Deshaun Watson. Stay here.
The early line.
Donnie, in this AP Top 25, what caught your eye?
Yeah, if we're looking just at, the old guard, right, which particularly pertains to the SEC, Alabama number 1, Georgia number 3, Texas number 6. So 3 teams in the SEC in the top 6. Wouldn't shock us again, Kevin, right? 2 teams out of the final 4 will end up being from SEC competition. Notre Dame at number 5.
Only on Sports Grid. The morning after.
LSU has the same odds to win the SEC at 100-1 as they do to win a national championship, also 100-1.
Well, I'll say this. There are going to be a lot of really bad takes about year one head coaches, and a lot of people jumping to conclusions because there are 8 programs who have played in a national championship in the 21st century who have a first-year head coach. That includes Virginia Tech because technically they played in a national championship in the first week.
The Sports Grid Network. Your heart's racing. The clock's running out. It all comes down to this. We're talking pregame. Pregame. Get locked in with Game Time Decisions. Your hosts, Gabe Morency and Cam Stewart, will get you ready for game time. Everything you need to know before a game goes off the board, with the bet slips to back it up. Make your best bet with live odds updates, late breaking news, up-to-the-minute injury reports, and real-time analytics from inside the sportsbooks. All the odds, all the action, from sports wagering insiders and industry pros like Donnie Rightside, Cam Lou, Cousin Sal, the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, and more. Get the winning edge every weekday afternoon from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 4 Pacific. It's Game Time Decisions. Only on Sports Grid. Pharrell, Coast to Coast.
The reality is that what I'm hearing is Flacco's going to play that game against the Ravens in week 1. And I'm just going to put, salt on this. Flacco's better than Zach Wilson anyway. I mean, he's better flat out anyway. All things being equal, he's head and shoulders better than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson sucks. And until
The Sports Grid Network.
In the NFL's appeal process of Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension, a verdict might be coming out very, very soon. As preseason week number 2 begins tonight, the Browns in action tomorrow on a Friday evening. Plenty to get to around the National Football League. Welcome back to the Morning After, live on this Thursday right here on Sports Grid. If there is an update to be brought in the Deshaun Watson discipline saga in the National Football League, that means our sports attorney, Dan Lust, is back on the show. Dan, thank you for joining us yet again on this Thursday to discuss more in the NFL's appeal of Deshaun Watson.
My pleasure to join you, and we've been on Watson Watch for a year and a half, and it seems like we're getting closer to that next decision point in this case.
Potentially closer to that finish line with maybe some more clarity, but it might also not be a full-blown finish line at this point. We got a tweet yesterday, a report from ESPN's Dan Graziano, Dan Lust, and it said this: sources close to the Deshaun Watson situation believe a resolution could come today or tomorrow. Recent talks between the NFL and Watson's reps have heightened hope that they can reach a settlement without Peter C. Harvey having to rule, but it's unclear how much longer he will wait. Of course, Peter C. Harvey, the former New Jersey Attorney General, the designee that Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the National Football League, appointed to oversee this appeals process. So Dan Graziano tweeted that yesterday when he said a resolution could come today or tomorrow. Dan, tomorrow is today. When do you think that decision comes down?
So I guess we got to go into the eye of the storm here, right? I've said for a while that while the NFL and the NFLPA don't see eye to eye on a lot of aspects of the Deshaun Watson case, they do agree on one thing. They would both like to put it in the rearview mirror, especially as week 1 is approaching. So the fact that Peter Harvey has not come to a decision yet tells you that the parties are moving closer, making some type of progress towards settlement. Not that it'll get done, but moving closer. So we could just talk about normal legal cases. If the parties are close, right, let's say there's a motion to dismiss a case, and you tell the judge, hey, the parties are close on resolution. Can you hold off on some type of decision? We might be able to work this out. Judges are usually inclined to wait because, what's the best resolution is one that both sides can agree to, right? So, I think that's what's happening here. And the longer this deadline gets pushed, right, if we don't get some type of decision today, it tells you that the parties are making under orders from the NFL personal conduct policy that says he has to come to a decision in an expedited manner. So we're approaching 15, 16 days on this. There was no oral argument. It was just on the papers. He's certainly had enough time. I think he is waiting because he's getting that direct order from the NFL.
So that timeline will be our focus. But Dan, in your legal opinion, do you believe the two sides will reach a settlement?
It's tough to say, right? I think last time we spoke, Ben, Deshaun Watson hadn't yet given an apology in the case. I think he apologized for the impact on these women. So it took Watson a year and a half to make a statement even resembling some type of apology. And that's Judge Robinson once upon a time who said that he had not shown any remorse. So if we're asking what could happen here, right? All of a sudden, Watson, for the first time in this case, is showing some semblance of remorse. That can be seen as a sign that he is maybe, right, making some concessions. I think a most likely outcome, I think what the NFL is probably pushing for, right? Some form of games, some form of, I think, counseling, like Ben Roethlisberger was once ordered to do by Roger Goodell once upon a time, and some type of monetary fine. I think the most likely outcome, if you have a settlement, is some amount of games in the sweet spot of maybe 10 to 12, but also those sweeteners on the side, some monetary fine and some form of counseling. I think Watson will take that, as long as it doesn't mean that he's out for a year. The signals that Watson's camp was sending before this whole, disciplinary hearing started, if he got a year, he would take this to federal court. And I don't really think either side wants to take that route.
And this is so much more than a football conversation or anything from the odds perspective. But in terms of the length of the actual suspension, Dan, we have followed it from those odds. And when you look at the win total for the Browns, it has worked its way down over the last couple of weeks from 9.5 when it was initially posted just a few weeks ago. Now 8.5, and the under has a lot of juice now at -145. You mentioned it. If there is a settlement to be had, it might be somewhere in the realm of 10 to 12 games. What we know right now, Judge Sue L. Robinson's ruling, a 6-game suspension for 2022, and that the NFL is seeking a full year-long suspension. Now, optics, Dan, have been a huge part of this entire conversation, rightfully or not rightfully so. However, from an optics perspective for the National Football League, who Commissioner Goodell has been adamant that they are seeking a full year-long suspension. If a settlement is reached around 10 to 12 games, what do you think that says from the NFL's perspective?
Well, it depends. If it's 10 to 12 games with nothing else, I would be very surprised if that's the settlement. I do expect it to be 10 to 12 games with, again, right, some form of counseling, which Watson has never been inclined to do. If we're going to stick to the odds for a second, again, and I think people saw that clip that went viral with the Jaguars fans chanting at Deshaun Watson, right? And Watson also really not playing well under that type of scrutiny, which I can't imagine people would, right? Jose Altuve certainly didn't play that well under the same scrutiny that he was kind of getting, in baseball circles for, their cheating scandal. So I will say, if you're watching those odds, I'd pay very close attention. The spotlight is not going to leave Deshaun Watson, and every fan base is going to want to take their shots and have their own chance, right? You can ask any legal expert. If Deshaun Watson takes this case to federal court, if there is no settlement, he's either going to ask for a TRO to start in week 1 so we can play week 1 moving forward, or he'll ask for that week 7 moving forward. And that's taking into account that Judge Robinson suspended him for 6 games and he didn't directly appeal that. So either way, right, there is a scenario where Watson is on the field playing with this thing hanging over his head if he does take this to federal court. So just imagine the spotlight that's going to be on Watson, the spotlight that's going to be placed on this case while he's playing. So that's why I'm not surprised to that win-loss total continue to dip from 9.5 to 8.5. Right. And if Watson has another poor showing like that in the Browns' second preseason game, not shocked if that goes down to 8.
In the Browns' opening preseason game last Friday night, Deshaun Watson just 1 of 5 for only 7 yards. I said the Browns were back in action tomorrow. That's actually this weekend, later on for a Sunday preseason affair for the Cleveland Browns against the Philadelphia Eagles. But Dan, you have brought our attention to that week 1 opener, and maybe that's the line that we pay the most attention to. The Cleveland Browns, of course, with all the storylines that have followed the Browns organization this offseason, on the road against Carolina and the former number one overall pick, their former quarterback in Baker Mayfield. You alluded to it there. What could potentially be a federal lawsuit. If Peter C. Harvey comes out with his decision in the NFL's appeal based on the CBA, that is final and binding. So what would the process be if there is not a settlement and Harvey makes his determination?
So let's talk about 2 things, right? We're now a couple weeks still away from the season. I don't think there's any scenario where Harvey waits until the eve of the season, right? Or waits till week 2 to make his decision. That's another scenario where, in theory, Watson could get on the field, right, week 1. But Watson's camp leaked this before Judge Robinson's hearing. They said if he were to get a 1-year suspension, he would take it to federal court. So, listen, I'm the lawyer here. I'll tell you, there is really no precedent for Watson to win his case. All the threats and make this as messy as he wants and say, I'm going to muddy the waters, but ask Zeke Elliott, ask Tom Brady. The federal courts are not kind to these cases because, again, these courts like to defer to the rules of a private association. And the NFL and the NFLPA agreed to this disciplinary procedure. So, like it or hate it, that's what they agreed to. So Watson can take this case to federal court. He can ask for a temporary restraining order, which would say, hold my suspension in abeyance until this case works itself out. But I think at the end of the day, I don't love Watson's chances on the merits in federal court. So he might take this up, and it might be a year battle like we saw with Tom Brady. And if that occurs, that suspension could really come into effect the following year. So, Ben, I know we've talked about it, but Watson stands to make $1 million in his base salary for this current season. His next year base salary skyrockets to $46 million. He has 46 million reasons to get this wrapped up in the 2022 season and not take it to next year. That's why I think he'll accept a suspension that is anything less than a 1-year deal.
I completely agree, Dan, and I think that will be the determining factor for Deshaun Watson's camp and the NFLPA, and we hope to get some sort of clarity and resolution soon. And when that happens, Dan Lust will focus on the Live Golf Tour, maybe Patrick Reed suing Golf Channel. Who knows? There's plenty to talk about, though. As always, Dan Lust, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Ben. Anytime.
We appreciate it a ton. The Yankees finally get a win. We get reaction from Max Goodman up next.
Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
people are going to the betting window
Betting
and
above
betting
the
them now
rim.
before the trade takes place.
How dare
Diamond
they
bets.
do what's fiscally responsible? See how it plays out. Buffalo's going all in right
Football
now. They
full
need
circle.
all their chips in the middle of the table. It's do or die for them.
And Goodman being out, they've had a little bit of a shakeup.
In-game live all access.
You could take the points, you could take the money line, and
We have to go to San Jose, too. Maybe a small play on San Jose. I'm going to go both underdogs here. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Wow. In-game
Phillies
live.
here,
Prime
over minus
time.
128. You do have to lay up a little bit of wood here, Donnie, but I think against Patrick Corbin.
But, boy, you want to give me 8.5 points with a desperate team facing
Get
elimination.
the winning edge. Only on Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Maurice Allen, 2015-2016 European Long Drive Tour champion, 2017 world number 1. Me personally, I keep my game face on me all the time. Especially coming out of the bunker, leaving the range, or even leaving the course. What's your story?
Fantasy Sports Today.
Definitely a starter in every fantasy football league. He's a top 12 quarterback but no longer the thought process where I guess he could be a number 2, the second overall quarterback or the third. Remember in years past he was being drafted right after the first couple of quarterbacks, but no longer the case. He's kind of like a consolation prize as opposed to the main starter for a lot of people.
The Sports Grid Network. The early line.
Can Cease become the favorite in this market by the result of this baseball game?
I don't think so, because we have to remind ourselves, this isn't, Dylan Cease pitching to Justin Verlander, and that's the head-to-head matchup, and who wins it gets the title belts, right? I mean, that's not the way it works here. You actually are taking a look at this game saying, how is Verlander going to do up against that Chicago White Sox lineup? How is Cease going to do against that Astros lineup?
Only on Sports Grid. Diamond Bets.
Fernando Tatis Jr. getting popped for a PED suspension for 80 games. Now, I know performance-enhancing drugs are something that, even here at the network, they encourage us, especially myself. They say, please, can you enhance your performance just a little bit more, Joe? This year, it's not going to happen next year for a good chunk of the season. And guess what? This is more important now that you added Juan Soto. So obviously this news rocked Major League Baseball.
Only on Sports Grid.
In dramatic fashion, the New York Yankees, a grand slam in the bottom of the 10th off the bat of Josh Donaldson, get a win finally. Just the third for the Pinstripes in their last 14 games, just their second in the last 8. We discuss everything New York baseball right here, right now, on the morning after, live on this Thursday on Sports Grid. With the insightful mind of one of the best covering the Pinstripes, it is Max Goodman from Sports Illustrated and Fan Nation joining us here once again on TMA. Max, a late night up in the Bronx. Thank you for joining us bright and early here on the morning after.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So win that ball off the bat of Josh Donaldson. With the bases loaded, the Yankees down 3 in the home half of the 10th is starting to fly over the short porch in right field. What was the thought going through your mind?
It was a lot of thoughts going through everybody's minds. I mean, like you said, it was a very late night at the stadium, rain delay, lengthy back and forth battle. And the Yankees haven't had a win like that in quite some time. I think, fans, if you follow that team throughout the first half, you kind of grew accustomed to the Yankees winning these dramatic comeback victories. They lead the American League in comeback wins in 2022. But with this recent slide, like you mentioned, 2-11 before last night since the trade deadline, 8-17 since the All-Star break, it's been a tougher go for this team to win those types of games. They haven't been finding the timely hits and getting that late inning magic on the mound. But it was a different story in that season, in this series finale, against the Rays. And Donaldson finally came up big. He had been struggling. Anthony Rizzo had been struggling. He had a game-tying homer earlier in the game. So it really was that perfect storm of the Yankees finally figuring out how to take care of business late in the game, and then the roar of the crowd. And I think that the guys on the bench were able to release, a sigh of relief, but also some jubilation that they haven't been able to express in quite some time.
Max, it's always so interesting to provide the context for one game in 162 of them in a Major League Baseball regular season. But how important was last night's game for the Yankees? What does it mean for that clubhouse?
Right. I think it was very important. In the grand scheme of things, a win in mid-August for a team that's 10 games up in their division and has been historically good throughout this year maybe doesn't mean that much. But considering the recent skid that they were on, they needed a win like this. And then, like I just talked about, they haven't had a comeback, gutsy, gritty win like this in quite some time. And they had been looking for a spark for several weeks now. They had been calling different players up, trying different guys in the lineup. Several key pieces had been injured, missing time, and finally they were able to make it all work. Of course, the question is now, can they turn one win into 2, 3, and more, and run with this, start to get back to the dominant form that we've seen from them throughout this season already? That's easier said than done. They've got another tough series coming in with the Blue Jays coming to town and the Mets for 2 in a couple of days as well. Right. But it seems like they're a lot more likely to run with this now versus how they looked when they were, barely getting to win any games since the trade deadline.
So there is the good. The Yankees still have the 4th best record in the bigs, 73-45. They still maintain a 10-game lead in the American League East over the Blue Jays and the Rays. But as you can see there, it hasn't been the greatest second half for the Bronx Bombers. 9-17 since the All-Star break. They avoid the sweep against Tampa last night, but have still lost 5 straight series. And it was just the 3rd win in the last 14 contests for Aaron Boone and the Yankees. So, Max, what is the biggest issue plaguing New York at this moment?
I've been asked that question a lot recently, whether it's from friends and family or on talk show radio and such. I think that the answer I've been giving is it's very reminiscent of last year. And if you followed this team in 2021, they were plagued by inconsistencies. They were never able to rattle off those stretches of comprehensive wins. And we saw early this year, they were able to play complimentary baseball pretty much every single day. And when they weren't blowing opponents out, they were coming back and still finding a way to win. Every single day, they were never out of a game. And it always felt like they had a chance. But recently, they're missing key pieces, like I said, but also on a day where the starting pitching is great, the offense isn't there. Or the offense is great, the starting pitching is solid, but the bullpen falters late. They could never, not never, but recently it's been a challenge for them to, across the board in all facets of the game, really produce to this team's potential, the potential we saw throughout a historic first half. So again, can they turn one win where they were able to step up in different facets and come back in improbable fashion? Can they turn that into a good run and a stretch of dominance? We'll see, but this was certainly a sign that they have what it takes.
Now, Max, you are one of the most insightful people covering the New York Yankees. If Aaron Boone said to you today, Max, come into the clubhouse, talk to the guys, we need something to make this all work, how would you try to fix what is happening with the Yankees currently?
If they had an answer to that, they would have done it already. I think that this is just a case of baseball being a very challenging game. I personally don't think it's time to smash the panic button yet. Even if they lost last night's game and the reeling continued, they still have the talent in that clubhouse to get the job done here. And better, this was something Aaron Judge said the other day, better to go on a run like this now in mid-August when you have a bit of a cushion in the division than when you're right about to go into October or when you are in October and then you lose a couple of games in a row and your season's over just like that. So they have the experienced veterans who have been there before. They have the youthful talent and some of the guys that they just brought up that have been playing, exceeding their expectations this year. And that perfect mix has led to, again, we'll keep saying it, a dominant and historic first half. But you got to get hot at the right time. You got to lean on depth in the pitching staff, and you got to get some key offensive guys back in the lineup. So now they have about a month and a half to get going, and then that's when the games really start to count. So we'll see. I mean, even the best teams can hit a roadblock or an obstacle or get cold at the wrong time, and they don't go as deep as they're supposed to in the playoffs. It's very hard to win in Major League Baseball with the length of the playoffs and the length of the season. So one win isn't going to fix everything, but they can try to bottle up that feeling from when Donaldson went deep and they were coming back in the final few innings. That's what it's going to take moving forward.
And that is wonderful perspective by Mr. Aaron Judge, brought to us by Max Goodman, covering the Yankees for Sports Illustrated and Fan Nation, because it leads to my next question. Despite the slide as of late, it's still the middle of August. The Yankees have 40-plus games left in the regular season to figure things out, and they still, again, hold a 10-game lead in the AL East. They are in prime position to be one of the top seeds in the American League postseason picture. However, Max, as we just showed, the Yankees no longer the favorites for the first time in a long time to win the American League. That would be the Houston Astros at plus 155, 20 cents ahead of the Yanks, who check in at second at plus 175. So no longer the favorite to win the AL pennant. Max, what is your concern level for the Pinstripes for October baseball and that outlook for New York?
Well, you mentioned the Astros, so I'll talk about that team. That's one opponent that dismantled the Yankees. Even when they were at their best, the Astros looked like they were the clear better team when these two faced off head-to-head earlier in the season. So you talk about a really rough stretch. Maybe it's not time in the grand scheme of things to press the panic button, but when you just consider Houston and a potential matchup down the road in the American League Championship Series, you think about home field advantage. And the Yankees were running away with the American League, but they've since lost that lead. And now if they were to play against the Astros in the ALCS, they'd have to go to Houston in a Game 7. And that's something, if you've been a fan of the Yankees for quite some time, you know that hasn't always worked out for this team. And there are questions in the back end of the Yankees bullpen right now with Clay Holmes on the injured list. Aroldis Chapman had been good recently, but he blew his spot last night. So who do you turn to? Let's say it's a close game, late in the game in Houston in Game 7, season on the line. You want to get to the World Series. You have what it takes, but they don't have a track record of winning in that spot. So obviously we're looking very far ahead still. That's a month and a half plus away, and they've got to get through a couple talented teams before then, let's say just with the American League Division Series as well. And the American League is stacked, quite frankly. They might face the Mariners or the Rays or the Blue Jays in that first round. That's no cakewalk for this team either. But I'm keeping an eye on Houston because, again, the way that they played against the Yankees earlier in this season, that should be a cause for concern, even with the moves the Yankees made to get better at the deadline.
It is a great point. We're in the home stretch of this Major League Baseball regular season. 162 games with 40-plus still seems like a long time, but we're nearing that postseason point. And right now, the Stros, a 2.5-game cushion over the Yankees for the best record in the American League. You mentioned the American League East as well, Max. If the season ended today with the Yankees winning the division, the Blue Jays and the Rays would be two of the three wild card teams, and the Orioles are still only a game and a half behind. The Yankees start a 4-game set against Toronto in the Bronx at Yankee Stadium today as well. How difficult is the path for New York looking forward to the postseason, still having to play so much good competition within their own division?
It's the best division in baseball. So facing those teams, I know late in September they'll go back to Toronto. They face Toronto now. The Mets are a challenge coming to town. This has been a very challenging part of their schedule, just specifically in August. And again, you want to hit the ground running in September and find that rhythm heading into the postseason. So as much as they have a pretty big cushion still in the American League East, even if it isn't as big as it was before this cold stretch, even winning their division isn't going to be everything that they need to go as far as this team is capable of. You got to get hot at the right time. Got to make sure you're healthy. You got to get going once the games really do count and the calendar flips to October.
And Frankie Montas gets the start today. His third in pinstripes at home against the Blue Jays. Right now, the Yankees a minus 148 favorite. Max Goodman covering the Yanks for Sports Illustrated. We appreciate the expertise as always. Back to the NFL up next here on the Morning After.
The morning after.
LSU has the same odds to win the SEC at 100-1 as they do to win a national championship, also 100-1.
Well, I'll say this. There are going to be a lot of really bad takes about year one head coaches, and a lot of people jumping to conclusions because there are 8 programs who have played in a national championship in the 21st century who have a first-year head coach. That includes Virginia Tech, because technically they played in a national championship in the first week.
The Sports Grid Network. Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
They play less games.
The early line.
Take a look at the top 4 seeds here in the Big Ten. They're going to play less.
Aaron Rodgers
The
and
morning
Russell
after.
Wilson. We saw movement in the marketplace like
Fantasy sports
the Cleveland
today.
Cavaliers are a little thin as well.
Newswire.
Minus 160 favorite on the money line today for Arizona.
Pharrell coast to
DBG,
coast.
that's where they win cups. They win Stanley Cups over there. Give me the
Game
Penguins.
time
Kind of
decisions.
bizarre when you consider everybody is out for the Warriors.
In-game
Everybody.
live
I
all
like
access.
Vandy. I like Vandy against Bama. I think Vandy can win the game, take it 4.5.
In-game live. Prime time.
The PGA champion.
In-game live.
All
Overtime.
done before the final bet.
Get the winning edge. Only on Sports Grid. The early line.
And if we just take a look at the rushing numbers, right, 1,100 yards is the benchmark for us. Well, last year as a rookie, Kevin, we just talked about Dalvin Cook. He can never stay healthy. How about a rookie playing all 17 weeks last year with Big Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers? How about him getting 307 rushing attempts as a rookie? I thought we were led to believe also the Pittsburgh Steelers where, yeah, we're about winning games, but we don't just hand things over to guys that get drafted and are drafted
Only
high.
on Sports Grid. Fantasy sports today.
Ezekiel Elliott declines even more and loses, let's say, 15% of the touchdowns and of the yards. He's being drafted way too high in fantasy this year.
I mean, I guess Ezekiel Elliott's supporters will point out, well, before he suffered the injury last year, sprained, I want to say his MCL, but I'm not, don't remember specifically, but it was a knee injury. Before the injury, yes, he was good, but it was 4 games into the season.
The Sports Grid Network.
Preseason week number 2 in the National Football League is here. It starts tonight in Seattle between the Seahawks and the Bears. We'll have a preview of that week 2 opener of preseason action in just a few minutes. But welcome back to the morning after, live right here on this Thursday on Sports Grid. I am Ben Stevens, very pleased to welcome on our football guy. It is Mike Blewitt here on TMA, the host of Pro Football Today, which debuts on Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Blewitt will be your resource alongside Kevin Walsh, maybe a mustachioed man by the name of Warren Sharp, and plenty more throughout this NFL season to get you set for everything you need on Sundays. Blewitt does that with us here during this training camp portion of the NFL schedule, about to enter week number 2 of the preseason. Blewitt, thank you for joining us on TMA.
Yeah, man, excited to be here with you. Obviously, kicking off Pro Football Today on Sunday. We're going to have George Kurtz in this week, but Kevin and I will get together in about 10 days' time. And as the season starts to roll on, we'll have a bunch of different guests. You mentioned Warren Sharp, Dr. Chow will chime in for a segment for us to take us through injuries. We got other guys like Adam Kaplan that have been with us in the past. So we'll get a lot of guests all throughout the year, giving you important perspectives on Sunday morning as you head towards kickoff. So I'm obviously fired up this time of the year and excited to be on with you.
A revamped Pro Football Today show. It is going to be fantastic right here on the grid. So it's not just preseason updates, also training camp updates around the National Football League. Big news for the Bolts yesterday. The Chargers extending their fantastic safety, Derwin James, a 4-year deal worth north of $19 million per year, with $42 million guaranteed, Blewitt, making him the highest paid safety in National Football League history. How important is Derwin James to that defense for Los Angeles moving forward?
Well, what's really interesting about this deal is safeties in the NFL do struggle to get big free agency deals. So this was a real clear message by the Chargers that despite his injury history, he's an extremely important part of what they're trying to do right now. Now, we generally have to wait a day or two, Ben, until we know all the escalators and the way things are structured before we tell you exactly what this could mean to salary cap implications and everything else. But the reality is they put their money down. He was holding in, so a part of the team, and really wanted to be back out there practicing. And I just think it's indicative of how important he is to the team and what they're trying to do. They have a window right now with Justin Herbert on a rookie contract to make a huge impact in the league. They've been very disappointing in missing the playoffs the last couple of seasons, but we have a situation where it may be lining up the right way. Very young, impactful defensive players. Mike Williams gets a deal. They have Austin Eckler still there, and Justin Herbert still yet to break the bank. That has been a model for years for teams to try to make a run towards the Super Bowl. I don't know, some people certainly like the Chargers to have huge success this year.
Some people are looking at the Chargers in a very optimistic way, as are the odds right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook. LA has a win total of 10, with the over having the juice side at minus 125. That alternate win total to go over 11 is 11.5 rather, is plus 200. And Blewitt, you see the playoff number on LA. That's where I want to focus right now. Minus 162. It's the fourth best odds of any team in the AFC to make the postseason, which the Chargers have only done once in the last 8 years. Let's start there. Are the Chargers a playoff team in 2022?
I do think they are. I think a lot of people have said this year over year about the Chargers, but I do think that when you put together what is a pretty jumbled AFC, a very competitive AFC, I do think they are one of the teams that I can pencil in. I wouldn't put them in pen, but I'd pencil them in to make the playoffs. I think they're there along with the Chiefs. You've got the Bills. You're going to take a look at a couple of AFC North teams, maybe as many as 3, depending on the Deshaun Watson situation. But it should be noted that the AFC West, in my opinion, and in many others, is the most competitive division in the entire league. I would not count out any of the teams making the playoffs. I think the Raiders have a legitimate shot. They were a playoff team last year. They've made some significant improvements to their roster. But you have to like what the Chargers have done. They added J.C. Jackson. They have him there with Derwin James, Asante Samuel. That alone makes their defensive backfield very intriguing, not to mention Joey Bosa, obviously, and Kenneth Murray patrolling the middle. So that's a powerful defense, along with an offense that struggled primarily in the past due to offensive line play, and that's been improved over the last couple of seasons, adding Rashawn Slater and others to the mix. Our chief concern right now, no pun intended, is that the Chargers have had a habit of blowing games late, and it continued with the new coaching regime. So Brandon Staley, who to me inexplicably is favored to win Coach of the Year, is going to have to really be tighter in the fourth quarter, remain consistent with going on fourth down if he chooses to be that aggressive.
If you think the books just love the Chargers based on that large win total at 10 or the alternate win total at 11.5 or the fourth best odds to make the playoffs at minus 162 in the AFC, the books love Brandon Staley as a head coach, the favorite last year in his rookie campaign as a head coach in the NFL to win Coach of the Year, a co-favorite this year still with Brian Daboll of the New York Jets. You mentioned chief concern. Well, Blewitt, you must have looked at the rundown because chiefly concerning yesterday for Kansas City was Mecole Hardman. banged up at training camp, left practice early, was carted off the field, and we got some news afterward from Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network. It's a groin issue with Mecole Hardman. They're not sure the absolute severity as of right now. He was carted off after walking off the practice field, carted back to the locker room facilities there at Chiefs camp. If there are any injuries to the Kansas City offense, Blewitt, knowing that they have lost Tyreek Hill, who now plays for the Miami Dolphins, how much more open does that make the very competitive AFC West?
I don't think that Mecole Hardman is going to be a difference maker in terms of the success of the team. I think for those of you out there hoping that Patrick Mahomes has a well-rounded receiving core, Mecole Hardman has not been the guy that stepped up over the last couple of years when he's had those opportunities. It will be more about Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who they poured a bunch of free agency money into, as well as Juju Smith-Schuster, Travis Kelce, who turns 33 this fall, will have to continue to be an elite pass-catching tight end. You have other players like Clyde Edwards-Helaire that can contribute in the passing game. They obviously drafted Sky Moore. If Sky Moore comes along quickly, I think it makes the Mecole Hardman loss less impactful, but also we saw some news yesterday that this might not be as serious as originally thought. So I just think that the Chiefs, people are looking for cracks in the armor. I think there could be a couple. And going back to the Brandon Staley conversation, he's favored to win Coach of the Year because there's an assumption that they're going to win the division, that they've overthrown the Chiefs after 6 years winning the division. That's why he's there. So I think this whole story, narrative, however you'd like to phrase it, lines up for the Chiefs to take a step back and the Chargers to move forward into a divisional champ.
I would just say the Chiefs have a win total of 10.5. They have gone over that number in 4 straight years, 4 consecutive years with 12 regular season wins, and they are the favorites in the division for a reason. KC has won the AFC West 6 straight years. All right, preseason week number 2 begins tonight in the Pacific Northwest. The Seahawks, a 3.5-point home favorite against the Chicago Bears. And Blewitt, that total is up to 40 after seeing all of the overs, 13 in fact, of the 16 preseason week number 1 games. How does Mike Blewitt approach betting on the preseason?
Bears Hawks, get pumped. What other matchup would you rather want than the Bears in Seattle? 2 teams with seasonal win totals at 5.5. We could not get a combined expected win total less than these 2 teams for 2022 than the Bears and the Hawks. So unless the Texans play the Falcons this preseason, which I don't, I'm unaware of at this point. So I would say in general, I am not a massive preseason bettor. I think you can look for some edges, make sure we know who's going to be out there at quarterback. Obviously the Seahawks played both guys, Locke and Smith, last week against the Steelers. And I think you'd want to make sure you know who's going to be out there, although that's really one of the true quarterback battles in the entire league. I think people feel a lot better about win totals during the preseason, about totals than they do point spreads in the preseason, and I can understand that. We saw some surprisingly high-scoring games in week 1. There was a lot of people that are hammering unders, but there were a bunch of games in which the point totals got up there. So I think both of these offenses are going to be wildly anemic during the regular season. So if you want an angle on this one, I'm leaning to the under in this game until these offensive lines prove that they can keep their quarterbacks upright. I think these are 2 of the worst offensive lines in the entire league, bottom 5 in both cases. And I think it's going to be the fatal flaw of both teams during the regular season. I don't see why it would be any better tonight.
Blewitt, that wasn't the most emphatic, optimistic picture to get us hyped for week number 2 of the NFL preseason.
The NFL scheduled Bears Seahawks on a Thursday night. What are we doing?
A standalone game by itself.
We have 15 other options. That one? Really? Come on.
Listen, I don't know. There was a thought maybe.
Smith? Hey, you know what we should highlight in week 2 is the Locksmith QB battle. Let's go with that.
Well, we're not going to see that QB battle necessarily tonight. Drew Lock testing positive for COVID. He will miss tonight's game against the Bears, but They were pretty even in the week 1 opener against your Steelers, Blewitt. Geno Smith again, 10 of 15 for 101 yards. Drew Lock, 11 of 15 for 102 and 2 touchdowns. Let's focus on the other quarterback, as you see the stats there for the Seahawks QBs in week number 1 of the preseason. Now, Justin Fields enters year number 2 with a cast of characters around him on offense that is not necessarily inspiring. Maybe even less inspiring than the Blewitt hype train for week 2 of the preseason starting tonight. Here are the odds available for the 2022 season for Justin Fields in his season-long props. 18.5 passing touchdowns to 15.5 interceptions. Blewitt, I'll ask you very simply, how concerned are you for Justin Fields in this Bears offense in year number 2 for Fields in the NFL?
I don't think any team has done less to help their quarterback during this offseason than the Chicago Bears did. They're in the middle of a complete rebuild, and much like we are seeing with the Falcons, they have to go down a little bit before they build it back up. I would expect, wholesale changes even after the season. I think Matt Eberflus is going to have to kind of go through this season understanding that this could be rough for him. I think Fields is going to be in rough shape because the offensive line is no better than it was a year ago. He doesn't have great options. I think Darnell Mooney is a legitimate player, but outside of that and Cole Kmet, I don't think he has a lot of options. I could see him going over on the touchdowns and Justin Fields winning a couple of games on his own, but I'm a hard under on the Bears this year on their win total.
Justin Fields is my guy, but he might be in the worst situation right now for a young quarterback in the National Football League. You saw it there. The win total for the Bears and the Seahawks, both 5.5, tied for the 3rd best, if you want to think of it that way, odds of having the worst record in the National Football League. Mike Blewitt, the host of Pro Football Today. It starts on Sunday. Blewitt, enjoy the week 2 opener of the preseason tonight, my man. We'll be back on the morning after next.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
I don't care if they play this game in Puerto Rico. I mean, the bottom line is, it doesn't matter Seattle or Anaheim. Robbie Ray's stuff has been beautiful all season long. He's gotten stronger. He's led the majors in innings, the last 2-3 years. The guy's an inning eater. He's going to go out and do his job. He's going to go out and get into the 7th inning tonight, and he's going to strike out and go over. He's going to get another 9 or 10 tonight.
The Sports Grid Network. The Early Line.
Donnie, in this AP Top 25, what caught your eye?
Yeah, if we're looking just at, the old guard, right, which particularly pertains to the SEC, Alabama number 1, Georgia number 3, Texas number 6. So 3 teams in the SEC in the top 6. Wouldn't shock us again, Kevin, right? 2 teams out of the final 4 will end up being from SEC competition. Notre Dame at number 5.
Only on Sports Grid.
Pro Football Doc has found its new home right here with Sports Injury Central. And with that comes our expansion into other sports. Sports Injury Central will give you nonstop exclusive injury analysis from experienced team doctors from all 3 major sports. Doctors with resumes that include teams like the Chicago Bulls, the Texas Rangers, and the LA Chargers. So gain a fantasy, DFS, and betting edge right now for free at SICScore.com.
The morning after.
Will the Niners have a better overall year than those 2 other teams, being the Jags and the Jets?
What's funny is I think you'd get a lot of people, though you make a good point about where the number would sit. I think you'd get a lot of people to bet the Niners. I'm high on the Niners. I still would take the combination. I'm low on the Jets. I know I'm probably walking into a real bad trap here, and I'm going to live with it. I am very optimistic about the Jacksonville Jaguars.
The Sports Grid Network. Fantasy Sports Today.
Definitely a starter in every fantasy football league. He's a top 12 quarterback in fantasy, but no longer the thought process where I guess he could be a number 2, the 2nd overall quarterback or the 3rd. Remember in years past, he was being drafted right after the first couple of quarterbacks, but no longer the case. He's kind of like a consolation prize as opposed to the main starter for a lot of people.
The Sports Grid Network. Diamond Bets.
Fernando Tatis Jr. getting popped for a PED suspension for 80 games. Now, I know performance-enhancing drugs are something that, even here at the network, they encourage us, especially myself. They say, please, can you enhance your performance just a little bit more, Joe? Next year, it's not going to happen next year for a good chunk of the season. And guess what? This is more important now that you added Juan Soto. So obviously this news rocked Major League Baseball.
Only on Sports Grid.
Rounding out hour number 2, the morning after. Live, hour number 1, live right here on the morning after on Sports Grid. Sorry, breaking news is happening right now. The Big Ten Conference has signed a new media rights deal with Fox, CBS, NBC, and Peacock, and FS1, and it's historic. $7 to $8 billion reportedly as of right now, with increases that could take it up to $10 billion. Whoa! That's a lot of money. So I'm trying to wrap my head around all of those dollar signs flashing through my head as Big Ten Ben. That's why I was a little confused here. Hour number 1 of the morning after comes to a close in just a couple of minutes. But before it does, here on Sirius XM channel 159 and all across the Spiz Grizz network, that's Sports Grid, we get your thoughts on New York baseball. The Yankees finally get a win yesterday, but just the third for the Bronx Bombers in their last 14 games. And the Mets get their first win this week in Atlanta, taking the first game in game number 3 of the series against the Braves. As we think October baseball, who's going to play in the World Series? We asked you that right here in Fade the Public. Of the 2 New York baseball teams at this moment, who is more likely to reach the World Series? The New York Mets or the New York Yankees? And right now, the public siding with the Amazons. Nearly 69% of the public think the Mets have the better shot of reaching the Fall Classic in the World Series than that of the New York Yankees. I understand this poll as of right now, but I wonder what it would have looked like just about a month and a half ago before the All-Star break when the Yankees had the best record in baseball. The Yankees' win total at the All-Star break was 105.5 for that updated number. It was the most in all the bigs. The Mets were at 98.5, and now the Mets seem to be more optimistic about not only what they can do the rest of this regular season, but their postseason chances in October as well. The Yankees still better odds, though, to win the World Series than the New York Mets at this moment. Hour number 2 is on the way here on the morning after, following a Sports Grid news update from Alex Fasano. We'll see you in a few.